What's cooking in your kitchen?
We are preparing balsamic strawberries, a buttermilk pound cake, some macaroni and cheese, and we're going to do some planning. So just stay tuned.
We have been blessed with the new week, so let's look at our menu plan. Now, first, before you do anything on this week, and this is the week coming, then you're going to want to look back at last week to see if there's anything that maybe you didn't get to. Now, so I'm starting at the very top. I always start at the beginning, and if you'll see, my ramen chicken salad, we had some things going on here. My husband was working on a project, so I didn't get to do that salad. So I moved it to our upcoming Monday. And so you'll see where I drew the line, and I actually ended up just doing Chinese takeout. Now, I did do the pork in a maple baked style, and used maple syrup and basted those pork chops. Oh, they were delicious. Wednesday we did our big salad. Thursday we did some LOs. And of course we had our Friday fish. And spaghetti alla Dooley was served on Saturday. And on Sunday, I don't know if you can read that, but that says that we had pork chops in a mushroom onion sauce. And that was pretty good because I had leftover pork chops from Tuesday that I needed to go ahead and use. The package that I had a few more pork chops in there that didn't need to be refroze. And so I went ahead and cooked them for Sunday just to get them out of the refrigerator. So I'm going to lighten that pork usage for this week. Now, let's look at this week. All right, on Monday, this is where I moved our ramen chicken salad. And you know, that's what you can do. You can just move it over to the next week. Now, for Tuesday, I'm planning an ultimate grilled cheese with a homemade tomato basil soup. Wednesday, we're going to have a lettuce wedge salad. Thursday, we're going to use some of the chicken that I had prepared for the chicken salad. We're going to use some of that in a ramen chicken soup. And it's not your packaged ramen. This is going to be ramen that we do from scratch. Now, Friday's going to be fish night. I think I'm going to make that official. Saturday, we're going to have lots of LOs. So those are our leftovers. So we're going to make sure that we put those leftovers to good use. I have already decided, just looking at what a busy week that we have, that we're going to pick up dinner from, and I haven't decided where that's going to be, but we're going to be picking dinner up and just bringing it on home and having that. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, I want you to look over at the grocery side. It is blank. We have everything we need. So that's a good thing. So this side gets to stay blank. Woohoo! That's a savings in and of itself. Now, I'm bringing something new out. And this may be something that you have laying around the house. You probably have a calendar somewhere, just a regular calendar. And this one I printed myself just because that's what I do. But I did print it myself mainly because it goes in my binder. And so what I've done, and this is what I was saying, keep up with what you do throughout the week. Don't throw those lists away. Because now is the time to go back and go all the way back. I didn't flip over to the first. So I didn't go all the way over. I think those were burgers. I don't remember what it was for the first. But anyway, I need to go back and figure out the first. And you'll see that I put in our maple glazed pork chops. I put in the big salad. We had our LOs. We had our fried catfish, and our spaghetti alla Dooley is right there. This is our and our pork with in that's simmered in a mushroom onion sauce. That's what we had. We're going to have today. Now, Monday, our ramen chicken salad. Now, I know for sure that on Thursday I'm going to prepare that ramen soup. So I've gone ahead and put those in. But you notice I kept the others blank. And I will keep those blank until we get to the end of this week. And then I can go back and plug in what we actually had on those days. You don't put anything on these. This particular calendar is the actual calendar for what you did. It and I like to even put it up on the refrigerator so I can see, okay, this is what we did. Now, what's going to happen is that by the end of the month, we will have an entire month of dinners. And I know for some of you, you think about what are the top 20 things that I like to cook. And to do that, it just blows your mind. But when you do it week by week, then it makes the process so much easier. So by the time we get down to the 30th, then we will be able to look back and say, oh, okay, I've got a month of dinners that I can draw from. And we'll be ready to move on to the month of July. So each week we're going to go through, we're going to take a look week by week. You do it little by little. And if we require any groceries, then we'll write them in. But if we don't, then woohoo, our savings is done and we will be ready to flip over to a new week. Okay? So let's get down to cooking because I don't know about you, but I've got a lot of things happening in my kitchen. I have taken out from the freezer some shrimp, some ham, and some chicken. And I have plans for those types of meat this week. So I've taken them out because I want to make sure that on my planner that I have something for each of them. I've also, as you can see, I have some macaroni and elbow macaroni to be specific, and I also have 2 boxes of strawberries. But today we're going to be doing some planning and taking a look at a monthly calendar, and so we're going to be very focused today. So let's get to what we are about to do. First of all, we want to look at the fact that the reason I have pulled the frozen food out is because they need to go into the refrigerator so that they can start to thaw, and when it's time to have them for dinner, each of them will be ready. I only pull out 3 at a time, and the reason for that is that, well, first of all, you don't want too many things thawing in your refrigerator because something's bound to go bad. So we've got shrimp, we've got ham, we've got chicken. So that means that we've got to come up with a plan as to what we're going to do with each of those. So our shrimp, I have a dish that I'm going to prepare with that this week. And I'm going to put each of those into this bowl. This is a Tupperware bowl that I have had for years, and I use it to hold those items that I'm about to use during the week. So let's get that into the refrigerator where it's a safe environment for our meats. Now, in this mixing bowl, it's a huge mixing bowl. We're going to place this macaroni into the mixing bowl and we're going to cover it with water. Now, our balsamic strawberries, oh, they are so
Good. So I am cutting each of those strawberries into quarters. I've had these strawberries for a while, and some of them are starting to look like they've been around a while, but I just hadn't gotten to them. So I figure I better go ahead, get them sliced up and into the bowl and back into the refrigerators and actually into a usable form. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going through, they've been rinsed, and I'm taking each one very carefully, making sure that it's in good shape. Those that I'm throwing back into the bowl just weren't quite at their peak, and so I'm putting them in that bowl. But what I'm going to do with them, I'm not going to throw them away. They're actually going to get composted, and even the tops, all the tops and any bad strawberries will actually go into the compost. So now balsamic strawberries aren't hard to make. It's just a matter of remembering that you have another option. Now, what the balsamic vinegar does is that it adds a certain umami to the strawberries. And I'm going to put sugar on them, not a lot of sugar, because balsamic vinegar has a certain little bit of sweetness to it as well, and lends itself very easily to strawberries, and in fact it's delicious. So I'm just going to get those sliced up and ready for this box. There's box one. We're going to move on to the second box. Now, how about you? What are some of the things that you're doing in your summer kitchen? You know, we're thinking about the summer, we're thinking about summer dishes, and certainly this is the time to use your strawberries to try to cook as many things with strawberries as you can. Strawberry pies. I've got a recipe for an icebox strawberry pie that I absolutely love. But you know what? I used to fix it all the time when the kids were here and I had other people's children coming in and out of the house all the time. I could really get those desserts right out the door because there were always a lot of people here and eating them. But you know, once there's only two in the household, desserts just have that tendency to sit around. And let's face it, after a certain age, you have to be careful with desserts. You can have some, but you cannot eat it every day. So I'm fixing this, and I'm going to fix the most delicious buttermilk pound cake. Oh, it will melt in your mouth. And you know what? It lends itself and holds up to these balsamic strawberries very well. And in fact, with balsamic strawberries, now you can add the ice cream and then kind of take the juice and pour over it. I did not want all of that. I love the strawberries. So I think I'm going to bake a cake, and I'm going to have some strawberries over it. It's going to be just absolutely great. I know you think, what are you talking about? All right, we got the strawberries all cut up, and I'm going to get that cleaned up, and we're going to be ready to get everything sweetened up, and let's get to it. You're going to love this. This is my cup, and I just knew that this cup was going to fit in this jar. Well, guess what? It didn't. And because the sugar had been sitting in this container for a while, just watch. Dink. Well, you know, that's the reason why I have a mat. Because, you know, things like that happen all the time. So it's a real kitchen, real cooking, and we have to be prepared for those types of things. So let me get the knife out of the way. The strawberries are all sweetened up, so what shall I do with this that's on the tray? Well, I could always pour it over the strawberries. Okay. Ah, perfect. A little more sugar won't hurt. Now,
let's get that all closed up and we're ready to move on. But I don't want to put that container totally away because I'm going to use it. Now, let me look for that balsamic vinegar. Now, I'm wiping things up just because, you know, where you have a sugar spill, it causes things to get sticky and ugh. Summer is not the time to have any sticky surfaces because you have a tendency to have visitors, little visitors like ants. And we do not have any and don't want any. So we're going to keep everything nice and clean. So let me get that vinegar out. Now also what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be using my microwave tonight to prepare a portion of the macaroni. And here we have the water. Now I'm going to take that water, I've put it in the microwave for about 8 minutes. And now I'm going to pour the elbow macaroni into that boiling hot water. I'm going to give it a really good stir because, you know, when you first add pasta, you have to make sure you stir, 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 and stir because otherwise it will stick. So now we're going to stir this mixture very well because I'm actually cooking the elbow macaroni in the microwave and saving some time. Now, what I will have to do is that I'm going to put it back in the microwave. It's had its first 8 minutes, and I'm going to put it on a couple more minutes with the macaroni. And while that is in the microwave, we can go on to work on the strawberries. So let's get things moving. So let's get our balsamic, and I've got my spoon and I've got to stir that up so that I can get the sugar all over the surface of the strawberries first. So let's just stir very well because we want each strawberry to have some of the balsamic, to have some of the sugar. There you go. Oh, then we'll put the top on this. It will sit in the refrigerator for several hours. And by the time we get ready to use that after dinner tonight, this will be perfect. It will be juicy. The strawberries will have broken down just enough and softened. And they're going to be sweet and savory at the same time. And I think probably just a little dash of balsamic will do that, don't you think? Just a dash. Let's finish those strawberries by shaking on some balsamic vinegar. And I am just going to put 1 tablespoon, that's all I need, 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. Put the top on it and place it into the refrigerator. Perfect. And then give it a good toss. There you go. That's it. That's all you have to do for a delightful dessert. Cake, buttermilk cake, needs to be put together quickly, efficiently, and we want it baked, soft, and ready for those strawberries. Now, I'm using my measuring scoop, and this is a 1 cup measuring scoop that I am going to measure out 3 cups of flour. Now we're going to measure those 3 cups of flour, and we're going to add some more things in this particular bowl. Then I'm going to sift it, and I'm going to sift it at least 2 times because I want my cake nice and light. So we're putting in 3 cups. There we go. That's the 3 cups. That needed to be measured. And we're going to need some baking soda. We need a half a teaspoon of baking soda, as well as a half teaspoon of salt. So I'm looking for a container, because when I sift, I do not want to make a mess. But you know, flour is hard to get up. So got the sifter, got the flour, so I'm just going to scoop cups in of flour and the baking soda and salt into the sifter so that I can sift it, and then I can put it back into the container and have it ready when it's time for it to go into the mixer. So that I'm just taking my time, getting everything in, and doing some sifting. Now, while we're sifting, how many of you love to bake? You know, I think that was the first thing I started to do as a kid, was to bake cookies. And then, because my mother was not a cake baker, now she loved to make pies, but cakes were not her thing. And so she had friends who made delicious cakes, but that just wasn't her thing. She made every kind of pie there was, but no cakes. And it's funny because I started off baking cakes, then went to pies, and my daughter is a super mom when it comes to baking cakes. She can make beautiful cakes. And so my granddaughter loves to cook, and it's just nice to have it right here in the family. Now, we've sifted there. We're going to sift everything back into the other container. So that will give us our 2 sifts of the flour. So let's get everything in that container. Like I said, we want everything well mixed, and we want it light. There we go. So we're going to get everything in there. Baking is fun, and when you have your grandchildren or your children around, everybody should be in on this, and give them jobs to do. My grandkids, when they come, I don't have to touch a thing because everybody has something to do, and they all love baking. Now, the youngest likes to try anyway. She's just not quite old enough to really give her an opportunity to do it all on her own, but I promise you, give her another year or so and she's going to be baking in that kitchen as well, and that's going to be so much fun. Now we've measured out 3 cups of sugar, and I'm getting the butter because I'm going to move you over to the mixer, because that's where we're going to really mix up this cake. Now we need a little citrus juice, so I've got a little bit of lime, a little bit of lemon, and a little bit of orange is going to go into this cake. All 3, lime, lemon, and orange. And then we'll have a dash of vanilla at the end. But those are the predominant flavors that are going to be in here. So I am putting in about a tablespoon each of lemon juice, tablespoon of lime, and a tablespoon of orange juices. So let me get my orange, and I'm going to have to do a little work to get that juice, but that's okay. That's okay. That's the fun of baking, and we're having such a good time. And you know, it was so cool this morning because I was in the process of getting everything ready to go today, and thinking about desserts, and you know, Father's Day is coming up very soon, and I had a little text from a family member who wanted a recipe, and you know what, that made my day, because when you're cooking and you're preparing different dishes and recipes, it is so much fun when you can share with family members. It's not to say necessarily that your recipe is going to be the absolute best, and we're not out to outdo each other. We are just here to love on each other. So she's baking a recipe for her family, and so I was able to share something with her to share with them. So I was just elated. It just really made my day. All right, so there we go. We're getting that orange juice in there. Ta-da! That's it. Got it. So we are going to be going over to that mixer, and I'm telling you what, that cake is going to come together so quickly. Now keep in mind, the butter is room temperature. The eggs are room temperature. The buttermilk is even room temperature, because you don't want cold items. We want everything to come together just right. So let's get everything over to the mixer and we'll be ready to go. Here we go. Now I don't know why I was looking at this tool today, and I picked that up thinking, well, I could start here. That was not going to work. What was I thinking? I just wanted to play with it. I don't think I've ever used that particular attachment on my KitchenAid. So I tried it. It was a moment that I had, but let me go back to my trusty paddle, which I absolutely love. And I love this particular paddle because of you see that rubber edge that's on it? It just gets the bowl nice and clean. So I love this particular paddle. So we're just going to start mixing. We're going to get the sugar in. We're going to get the butter in. It's kind of get everything in there other than the eggs. The eggs are the only thing you have to be very particular about. All right, so we got butter and sugar. There we go. And they're in there and mixing. Let's get the sugar in. There's the butter. Get the sugar, pour it in. Then I'm going to turn things up a notch in a few minutes. There we go. Now, you know, for some cakes you have to whip and whip and whip. And I gave, really to be honest with you, I gave the butter and sugar a really good mixing, because I wanted them to be very soft. But then I thought about it, I was going to add the buttermilk anyway. Buttermilk is funny. I don't know if you've ever cooked with it, but you know, it doesn't look like normal milk, and for some people you think, ew, you know, you don't want to necessarily, my mother used to drink it, but, and some people do who like it, but that's not my thing to drink. So I didn't have but a little bit left over in that container, so I just kind of poured all that in. This was a perfect way to end a container of buttermilk. I try to keep some in the refrigerator all the time. So we've got that just beating. I want that to work together. Now, if you decide to do this particular recipe, remember the buttermilk, once you start to add those citrus juices to it, it's going to look like it's curdling. It's not going to look smooth and pretty. It's really going to start to look a little odd. But just trust it. It's going to come together just fine. So I am adding 6 room temperature eggs one at a time. There we go, and I'm adding each of those. And you're doing them one at a time to give everything a chance to mix and to come together each time, because when you dump them all in at one time, now sure, we could do a lot of mixing and beating and letting it go for about 3 or 4 minutes, but it just wouldn't be quite at the same. Now I got a little shell in there, so I'm trying to get that out very quickly and move on. So rinsing my hands off. Okay, we're ready to move on. So let's get the next egg in. Now, there we go. We're just moving right along. The good thing about the KitchenAid is that you can just speed things along. Now, the only reason I haven't turned up the speed at this point is because I don't want eggs all over myself and everything else. So we're just taking our time adding those eggs, and plus we can't overmix the eggs. That's the good thing. You know, we talk about overmixing cakes, but you cannot overmix this cake at this point. Now, the more eggs I add in here, remember I told you it's going to look funny, and we're just finishing up with those eggs. I'm getting everything rinsed off because we are dealing with raw eggs. So we want to make sure that all of that goes into a solution of hot water. So we've got the eggs going, and I am going to cut this up a notch. So let's see if we can get this moving. I don't know if you can tell. You can see it's not smooth, and it almost has a very curdled look. And now let's prepare the pan. So I've taken my spring form pan because that's what I'm going to be using, and I have traced onto parchment paper the shape of the pan as well as the center. So I'm going to cut that out so that I can get that onto the bottom of the spring form pan, because I do not want this cake to stick. And you know, sometimes with spring form pans, they can, if you have enough sugar in them, that they can certainly stick very easily. And so we're going to try to avoid that. So we're going to get everything in. We're going to use the butter wrappers as a tool for greasing our pan. And we're going to get all of this greased very well with the butter wrappers. So watch, I'm going to fold this in half. Even though I traced the center, I'm going to cut around my lines. And when you do this, if it's still tight, then you can put just little snips, little small snips in the side, and it will eventually go down. So like I started to put it in and it was too tight. So it's like, okay, well, let me just snip and snip on the other side. Still didn't work, so let me snip and snip one more time, two more times actually, and there we go. So I put in 4 little cuts to get it to lay down. Now I'm getting those butter wrappers because we're going to use those, and we're going to just take those and wipe the parchment paper as well as the center. We don't want to waste anything. That's what our mothers and grandmothers used to do. They wasted nothing. They used everything they had. They had a use for it. And we're going to do the same thing. We are not going to throw those wrappers away. And in fact, I have even collected the wrappers as the butter, as I finished using butter, and put them in the freezer. So when I was doing a cake, I could take a wrapper out, a wrapper or two out, and wipe the pan down. So that's what we're doing. We're just taking those wrappers and wiping the pan. And there it is. So we're going to get all of that locked in place so that everything's ready to receive the cake batter. Voila. It's ready to go. So let's get the butter cleaned up. So there we go. Now look at it. Look at it right now before I start to add in the flour. And we're just going to add a little bit of flour at a time. Notice I turned the speed down because I do not want to look like a puff of flour. So we're taking our time because this is where you can overbeat. We do not want the gluten in the flour to set up. So because of that, we're taking it very slow and very gently to mix the flour into the wet ingredients. And it's going to come together quickly. You're going to look at it and think, oh, now it looks like a cake. So I'm stopping it just a moment, scraping down the sides. anything that's missed, kind of run it across the bottom, and then we can go ahead and finish. Actually, this part, just the mixing of the flour, we could do by hand, but why do that when you have a KitchenAid? So I'm just going to give it a minute because you do not want to over mix. Maybe count to 20 and that's it. And the cake should be ready. You do not want a tough cake. So we are not giving this a long time. There we go. Now see? Now it looks like cake batter. This batter is beautiful. Look at how it's come together. It's nice and smooth. It's light. I'm just kind of wiping things down. I'm going to give it just a second. Give it a quick whip. And done. That's it, guys. Our cake is ready. The cake batter is ready. Now, this cake is going to be going into a 350-degree oven for 90 minutes. You have a choice. If you put it into a coal oven, you're going to need the entire 90 minutes. But if you preheat your oven, then it will probably take half that time. So that's the difference. If you have a coal oven, probably a good 90 minutes. But if not, probably about 40 minutes. And you'll start testing. So don't just walk away from this cake and think that you can just move on and do something else and not kind of keep an eye on it. You want to make sure you do that. And be sure to keep your toothpicks handy or your skewers handy so that you can test the cake to make sure that it's completely cooked, but you don't want to overcook it. You want it to be beautifully brown. You want your skewer or your toothpick to come out clean, but you do not want a dry cake. You want a nice, moist cake. And that's exactly what this particular recipe will produce, a moist cake. Now, we've got our cake in the pan. I'm going to give it a little shake, kind of clean it up a little bit, and get it into the oven. Now, I'm doing this to make sure that there are no air bubbles, and we're ready to go. So, 350 degrees, 90 minutes in a cold oven, and about 40 minutes in a hot one.
We have spent a lot of time together today in the kitchen, hours, and oh, what fun it was. So I will miss you, and I will look forward to the next time we're in the kitchen together. But before I leave, I don't want you to leave without my letting you know how much I appreciate your being here. We are family and friends. And when we have family and friends, those things are important to us. I hope you know that as these days and weeks go by and our environment changes one way or another, that you will take the time to be safe and to be considerate of both yourself as well as others. I love you, and I hope to see you very soon in the kitchen. Because of the length of today's video, I have purposely uploaded it in 2 parts. So, you're watching part 1, and you will want to stay tuned for part 2. See you soon. These little hydrangeas came out of my garden. Aren't they beautiful? Let's see if I can give you a better view.
Do you have your candle lit? We really need to shine our light.